there's no question that migrants bring. America is a country that was built in part by immigrants.
This could very well be her worst interview of the entire election season. So yesterday, as we discussed, Kamala Harris needed a break, a little spa day. You know, running for president can be so exhausting. She needed to rest. So she spent all day resting at her home in Washington, D.C. And then in the evening, she opened up the doors. It's not really her home, by the way. It's the vice president's residence, the Naval Observatory on Massachusetts Avenue in Washington, D.C. It's a nice neighborhood, a lot of embassies there. She opened up her doors to a camera crew from NBC News. And once again, she sat for an interview. And you know how we mentioned yesterday that every time she opens her mouth and appears before the American people and tells us what she really believes and what she really thinks, she harms her own chances in this campaign. Her popularity goes further down the toilet. I regret to inform anyone who's still bitterly clinging to the idea of Kamala Harris being president. I regret to inform you that she did it again last night. In fact, this could very well be her worst interview of the entire election season. Let's start with this. It's probably the most important revelation of what Kamala Harris truly believes and what her principles and values really are that you'll ever see.
What concessions would be on the table? Religious exemptions, for example, is that something that you would consider?
I don't think we should be making concessions when we're talking about a fundamental freedom to make decisions about your own body.
To Republicans like, for example, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, who would back something like this on a Democratic agenda if, in fact, Republicans control Congress, would you offer them an olive branch, or is that off the table? Is that not an option for you?
I'm not going to engage in hypotheticals.
Okay, so obviously this is a conversation about abortion. And that last part there, when she was asked, listen, there are some Republicans who might be willing to make a deal with you about making abortion legal on a federal level if you're willing to give some concessions. And if Kamala Harris truly is trying to peel off like Republican voters or people that are on the fence or people who would normally not vote for a Democrat, but they're really concerned about abortion and they're concerned about Trump, this would have been a great opportunity for at least give that little inch and say, sure, yeah, you know, it's a legislative process, but she couldn't even do that. She couldn't even do that. And that's because abortion is what matters most to her. You want to know who Kamala Harris is. You want to know what her principles are. You want to know what she values most. It's being able to legally kill unborn children. It's clear. That's what she, and in fact, this is probably the most genuine I've seen her in an interview. She doesn't come across as fake or fraudulent. She doesn't come across phony. She doesn't come across like she's trying to memorize a talking point. This is who she is. But the first part is the most important part. And we're going to watch it one more time. The very first part of this, because this interviewer, Hallie Jackson, who I got to say didn't do a bad job at all. Hallie Jackson said, are there any exemptions that you'd be willing to put forth? Religious exemptions, for example. And let's just be clear what religious exemptions means. Let's say you're a doctor. Let's say you're a trained OBGYN, but you're a devout Christian, or you have very solid religious beliefs. And those religious beliefs would preclude you from performing an abortion. Would Kamala Harris, as president of the United States, with abortion being the law of the land, would she allow that faithful Christian, Jewish, Muslim doctor to be able to say, no, I'll be an OBGYN, I will perform every duty, but I will not perform an abortion? Kamala Harris would say no. Let's say you're a Catholic hospital or a Christian hospital, and you service the community, and you take care of all the problems that the community faces. But the one thing you won't do is allow an abortion to take place in your hospital. Would President Kamala Harris allow that religious institution to be able to have that exemption? Kamala Harris would say no. Let's say you're a religious school or you're a religious institution and you employ people and you have to provide health care for them. Let's say you're an archdiocese in a major city and you employ people and they work for you. Let's say you're a religious employer that really takes your faith seriously, and your health insurance that you provide your employees does not also include subsidized abortions, because as the employer, you are not going to pay for a health insurance program that performs this inherently evil, sinful act because it violates your religious beliefs. Would President Kamala Harris allow you to have an exemption? She would not. Now, that's pretty standard fare for Democrats. And we're pretty used to hearing that. I mean, after all, Barack Obama actually sued nuns for not supplying birth control. So there's nothing new here. But what she said about why she wouldn't allow those exemptions, this is new. This is something that is so revealing of Kamala Harris that we have to watch it again together. Are you ready for it now? I want you to watch it. It's very important. It's very, very important.
What concessions would be on the table? Religious exemptions, for example, is that something that you would consider?
I don't think we should be making concessions when we're talking about a fundamental freedom to make decisions about your own body.
There it is. I hope you caught it. I'm going to spell it out for you. When Kamala Harris, should she win the election, is sworn in as the president of the United States, she'll put her hand on a holy book. One assumes that it's the Bible, but who knows? And she will swear to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. And the First Amendment of that Constitution, enshrined in our Bill of Rights and ratified along with the Constitution back in 1789, is a pretty clear and concise defense of individuals' right to practice their faith without any infringement from the federal government. It's the right to free speech, the right to freedom of the press, the right to freedom of expression, and the right to your religious faith. That the nation would not institute a state religion at the federal level, and that every single individual has the right to exercise their religion and their faith freely without any encumbrance from the government. And that freedom is not anything that Kamala Harris has any interest in defending. You just heard it. In fact, she specifically said that there is no exemption for religion because of the fundamental right to control your body. In other words, and I don't really mean to put it in other words because you don't need other words. Kamala Harris believes that the right to kill an unborn baby overrides the right to practice your religious faith. That is precisely what she just said. Don't believe me? Watch it again.
What concessions would be on the table? Religious exemptions, for example, is that something that you would consider?
I don't think we should be making concessions when we're talking about a fundamental freedom to make decisions about your own body.
It doesn't occur to her that the right to practice your faith unencumbered by government intrusion is a fundamental right. The only thing that occurs to her is your fundamental right to kill that baby. I mean, listen, you all have your own reasons to vote for people, and I'm certainly not going to lecture you about who you should vote for. But if your Constitution matters to you and your fundamental First Amendment rights, because there's other rights wrapped up in that First Amendment, you might want to think twice about handing power over to this woman. Because I found that to be chilling, terrifying, yet incredibly instructive about what she values most. But her really, really bad 12-hour news cycle didn't end there. She also started this morning with an interview with Telemundo where she basically conceded, well, I'll let you hear it for herself.
Right now, we're talking about border security, and there's nobody, no Democrat, talking about pathway to citizenship, and immigration relief, and the benefits that migrants bring to this country.
Oh, but there's no question that migrants bring. America is a country that was built in part by immigrants.
But people are concerned about their TPS, their DACA, we're talking about mass deportations.
I'm not talking about.
What do you stand on mass deportations? What's your stand there?
We need smart, humane immigration policy in America that includes a pathway to citizenship.
All right. So when pressed by the journalist at Univision, she was caught on her heels and she said, oh, let's be clear. All those millions of so-called migrants who have crossed the border illegally under my watch and under Joe Biden's watch, yeah, we're giving them amnesty and we're giving them citizenship. Again, 2 moments in 2 interviews within a 12-hour span on NBC News and on Telemundo/NBC News, where she basically says there's no religious exemption that can override the right to kill a baby. Abortion overrides your right to practice your faith. And every single illegal immigrant will get amnesty and a pathway to citizenship. I mean, at least we're having a clarifying moment here at the end of this campaign. Let's go back to NBC News last night, where finally Kamala Harris is asked and pressed on, frankly, the only question that she should have been asked and forced to answer from day one when she ascended into the throne and was anointed the nominee for the Democratic Party. And that is, what did you know about Joe Biden's health and what went on behind the scenes that made you wind up here, the nominee for president, without ever getting one single vote from Democrats in a primary? And you would think at this point that she would have been ready for that question. But, well, I don't think she was. Take a look.
Can you say that you were honest with the American people about what you saw in those moments with President Biden as you were with him again and again, repeatedly in that time?
Of course. Joe Biden is an extremely accomplished, experienced, and capable in every way that anyone would want if they're president.
And you never saw anything like what happened at the debate night behind closed doors with him?
It was a bad debate. People have bad debates. He is absolutely.
But that's the reason why you're.
So this is the same talking point they had the first week of July before he was bounced off the ticket. This is exactly what she said that night. It was a rough night. He had a bad night, but he's completely 100% capable. In fact, he's more capable of being president than anyone. And Hallie Jackson, I didn't mean to step on it, so I'm going to go back a little bit because she makes a really good point. Because he's like, yeah, he had a bad debate, but he's fine. He's absolutely more capable. He's fantastic. He's terrific. And she says, but this is why you're here right now. I mean, if he was that great, I'd be interviewing him 13 days before election night for his reelection. So what the hell is going on here? If he's so great, if he's so competent, if there's no problem, then what the hell are you doing here?
He is absolutely.
But that's the reason why you're here, and he's not running for the top of the ticket.
Well, you'd have to ask him if that's the only reason why.
Are you kidding me? So now Kamala Harris is pretending like I have no idea why he decided not to run. I have no idea why he removed himself from the ticket. You'll have to ask him. I haven't asked him. That's really not for me to say. It reminds me of our first segment today. And I'm sorry, if you're just watching this standalone clip, you should go back and watch the segment we did on the deceitful story about Donald Trump from Jeffrey Goldberg. But some of the CNN panelists there said, what do we do with these idiot voters who are still voting for Donald Trump when they act like they don't see what we all see with our very eyes? Well, look at this. Kamala Harris wants you to forget about what you see, what's so obvious with regard to Joe Biden's behavior and his cognitive and physical and mental decline. Forget that. It's not true. That sky that's blue up there, no, it's orange. That grass that's green in front of your house, no, it's yellow. What's wrong with you? He's fine. Oh, really? Then why are you the nominee? I have no idea. You'll have to ask him. You'd think after 3 months they'd have this answer down. They would have written something. They've got all these friends in Hollywood. These white dudes for Harris that write really good movies. Maybe they could have written something for her. But this continues. And again, Hallie Jackson deserves a little bit of credit, a modicum of credit for not letting it go. She's going to slip into a memorized, pat sort of talking point script that has been written that she's remembered, and she's going to reiterate it. And most journalists, most interviewers, they know that that's the signal that as soon as she repeats her standard talking point, it's time to move on. But she doesn't. She presses her again. Watch.
What do you think?
I'm running for president of the United States. Joe Biden is not. And my presidency will be about bringing a new generation of leadership to America that is focused on the work that we need to do to invest in the ambitions and aspirations of the American people.
It's a judgment question. That's why I ask. Can the American people trust you in these moments, even when it's maybe uncomfortable for Americans to level with Americans in that way? So that's why I ask. And it sounds like what you're saying is you feel like you never saw anything like that from President Biden.
I have worked with Joe Biden, hours and hours and hours over these 4 years, whether it be in the Situation Room or the Oval Office. Joe Biden is the one who was able to bring NATO together during a crisis where for the first time in 70 years, Europe saw and has seen war. Joe Biden has done the work that has been about being a leader on what we have done to fix so much of what has been broken in terms of the economy because of Donald Trump's mismanagement. I speak with not only sincerity, but with a real firsthand account of watching him do this work. I have no reluctance in saying that.
This campaign is hemorrhaging. It's in horrible trouble. It's bleeding out as bad as a journalist watching Adam Kinzinger hit a metal target with an AR-15 from 10 feet away. That's how bad this is right now. We are less than 2 weeks from Election Day. People are voting right now. Trump is ahead in the polls in every single one of the battleground states, in a better position that he has been every single time he's run for president. And all she's doing is answering a question that she should have been able to answer and put to bed 3 months ago. And she's not doing a very good job of it. And all she and her surrogates can do is trash Donald Trump as Hitler, which is something they've been saying since Hillary Clinton tried it when she called you a basket of deplorables. And the one thing they're not doing is providing any solutions for the American people right now, which is what Trump and Vance are talking about. This is crisis time for Team Kamala. And that answer, that 2 minutes that you just saw, tap dancing around the obvious thing about Joe Biden's health, the only explanation for this is that a deal was made. A deal was made behind the scenes, and Kamala Harris, she had one promise that she had to make. I'm not going to say anything negative about you, Joe. And Joe Biden, the only insurance policies he's got is, if you do, then I'm going to unleash all hell on all y'all. He's come close to it, by the way. And that's the only explanation. So they're screwed. They're stuck. They're stuck. They're talking about Joe Biden. They're talking about Donald Trump. And she's having to defend herself. That question, how can the American people trust you? Are you being honest about this? This is a question of your credibility. This is not something she should have to deal with 2 weeks out. And yet she is. There's more in this interview, by the way. Well, let's plow through some of these smaller clips, but they're good. And again, very revealing of who she is and how bad she is.
And our new NBC News poll shows that more voters think that the Biden administration policies have hurt them rather than helped them. And I wonder, are the last 4 years an obstacle to you in this race?
Here's how I look at it. First of all, let me be very clear. Mine will not be a continuation of the Biden administration. I bring my own experiences, my own ideas to it, and it has informed a number of my areas of focus, most of which are, on, to your point, lowering costs. I am traveling the country. I am very clear. Cost of groceries still too high. The voters know it. I know it. So part of my plan includes what we need to do to bring down the.
Yeah. Then she goes into her recitation of things. But that isn't an actual answer to the question. The question is, the performance of Joe Biden over the last 4 years, is that a hindrance to you? And all she can say is, well, I'm going to do better, which is a tacit admission that, yeah, she's inherited and she's been part of. And that's the real reason why she can't answer the question, because Joe Biden has already set her up here. Oh, yeah, she was involved in every single decision we made. Oh, all those most important things that I did. She was right there. She was the point person. She was the tip of the spear. This is not just Joe Biden's economy. She's got to own it all as well. All right, a little bit more here.
Then why do you think that's not landing with voters? Because in the numbers, it's the opposite. Former President Trump leads you on this issue.
Well, when I'm out, this is why I'm going out to Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan,
yeah.
Excuse me. Just got in late this morning, actually. But going to 3 states yesterday, and I'm going to continue being on the road. I have to earn the vote.
I do like it when she can't remember one of the only 3 states that she has to remember right now, her, fierce blue wall there. She was then asked a question, which was similar to something that Brett Baer had pointed out, that she's being really hurt by this ad that the Trump campaign has put out that uses her own words coming out of her own mouth, advocating for taxpayer-funded transgender procedures for convicted felons, convicted criminals in jail. And what's really great about the way Hallie Jackson approaches this is she kind of asks the question from the left perspective, from the trans community's perspective, because all Kamala Harris has said was, well, we'll follow the law. And Hallie Jackson then follows up, and you'll see it in a second, where she says, yeah, but what do you believe? What is the right thing? What should happen? Not just will you follow the law, because that's a cop-out, but what do you actually believe in your heart about this issue? And spoiler alert, you won't get an answer.
I will move on, but I don't know that I heard a clear answer from you on the issue of gender-affirming care. It sounds like what you're saying is this should be something between trans Americans and their doctors. It feels like that's a long way from "we see you and we love you," which was your message to trans Americans in May. What do you want the LGBTQ plus community to know as they're looking for a full-throated backing from you for trans Americans?
I believe that all people should be treated with dignity and respect. Period. And should not be vilified for who they are, and should not be bullied for who they are. And that is a true statement for me my entire career, and that has not changed.
Okay, but of course the question is about taxpayer funding for transgender procedures for convicted felons, not whether people should be bullied or treated with respect. Yeah, they're in big trouble. One other quick question, sort of a follow-up to this whole trans issue.
You've been reluctant to lean into, to talk about the historic nature of your candidacy on the campaign trail. Why is that?
Well, I'm clearly a woman. I don't need to point that out to anyone. The point that most people really care about is, can you do the job? And do you have a plan to actually focus on them?
I hear you on that.
That is why I spend the majority of my time listening and then addressing the concerns, the challenges, the dreams, the ambitions, and the aspirations of the American people.
You've been reluctant.
Well, there you go. I mean, the important answer to that question is I'm clearly a woman, which, by the way, also for some of you conspiracy theorists out there or people with wild imaginations, could very well be the real reason why at the Chicago convention there wasn't an attempt to get Michelle Obama on the ticket. There's a lot at stake in the upcoming election, but regardless of who's sitting in the White House, the fuse on the economy has already been lit. 4 years of a conservative presidency is probably not going to be enough to turn the tide of our $35 trillion national debt. And if the left wins, come on, it's like throwing gas on a dumpster fire that's already raging. You don't have much control over the election's outcome, but you can control your own savings. You can diversify it right now by investing in gold from Birch Gold. For millennia, gold has stood firm in the face of greedy governments, economic upheavals, and global strife, and it can help protect you right now. Birch Gold can help you convert an IRA or a 401k into an IRA in physical gold, and it doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. You know, in the past 4 years, the buying power of the U.S. dollar has declined, while at the same time, the price of gold has increased by about 40%. And that's not a coincidence. Text my name, Larry, to 989898. Get your free info kit on gold and trust Birch Gold, as I do, to protect your savings. Text Larry to 989898 today.